I am here with Erik Thor. Is that your real last name, by the way?
That is my real last name. I
That's
am
awesome.
Swedish. I grew up in Sweden.
That's
So
very
proper
awesome.
Viking name.
And yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. I've on and off been following your channel, I think, I don't know, 3 years ago or so. I think I emailed you 2 or 3 years ago just to give you some props. And we've both been on YouTube probably a similar time. And one of the things that you're very good at is going deep into the psychology behind MBTI and other personality types. And you've even developed your own system, which I like the concept of based on being when you're in flow, because, well, we'll get into all that, I think, why that's important, but I completely buy into why that makes so much more sense. Yeah, there were a few big themes I wanted to talk to you about. One is figuring out your type in general. I get so many emails from people, my type is this, or I was this, but sometimes I'm this and sometimes I'm that. And of course, being a channel that I mostly talk to ENFPs and INFPs, they're posted on completely unrelated videos. Like my video on how to build a freelancing career, someone will be like, I'm sometimes an INFP and sometimes an ENFP in the comments.
Yeah.
And yeah, wanted to get your expertise on that because it's not something I am anywhere near an expert on. So where do you want to start on that topic of figuring out your type?
Yeah. So I want to first go back to what you said about flow, and it's not. I like that you brought that up because that is kind of the center of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to connect the study of personality types to something valuable, meaning I'm trying to apply the study of type to understand how people enter into a state of flow or how they can get more energy and joy and motivation and meaning out of life. So I'm thinking, how can you use type theory to become more confident in yourself and to be more secure in who you are? And so that's also why I kind of was interested when you sent an email to me, because I've studied your channel as well. And I like how when you talk about type and when you talk about MBTI, you tend to connect it to real life issues and practical psychology. And you are able to apply the theory to also discuss relationships and lifestyle decisions and freelancing and all those things. So I feel that that's what people should do. A lot of people get lost in just coming up with different theories about how psychology or type could work, but few actually look at, well, what can I do with this knowledge? How can I use this to understand my own life?
Yeah, definitely. If you're living in your parents' basement, playing World of Warcraft 30 hours a day, then on Discord the other 30 hours debating type psychology, you might have missed, some of the key parts of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Like what I see with some of those people that are stuck not knowing what personality type they are, a lot of these people are people that haven't really actualized into any personality type. Well, of
Mm.
course, they have a personality type. It's only that because they are spending so much time in their basement playing World of Warcraft, they don't have a chance to go out into life and really experience like deep relationships, deep conversations, difficult life decisions, and choices about work and careers and all those things. And it's when you make those choices and it's when you're faced with those kind of questions like, what kind of a partner do I want, where do I want to live, what kind of a life do I want for myself, that's when you kind of start to really understand what personality type you are and what kind of a person you are.
That's a very, very good point.
So often when people come to me and they feel lost about their personality type, often what I tell them to do is the first thing you need to go is you need to go out and live life and experience it. And then after that, process it and reflect on what it meant for you and who you are in that, what you've experienced.
It's a very good point. And I think too, we changed a lot. It came up on a call I had the other day. Someone was saying, I think I'm an INFP now because I've always been an ENFP, but I've been working from home for so long and I don't feel like going out as much. So now I test as an INFP. And I
Yeah.
just had to politely mention, no, like that isn't the case. It's just the testing is so shitty that your standard tests out there are just like, I think it was you um, who said on an interview, and I think I've used this from you before in private conversations, where you were saying like the test is like, do you want to stay home and read a book, or do you want to go out and do cocaine at a rave? It's like the extreme types of questions that it asks.
Yeah, you can use those, and that's often when people are introduced to the MBTI, they are usually introduced to kind of a stereotypical, dumbed down, simplified version of what the MBTI is. So you have like 16 personalities in those websites where people basically just get to hear the most extreme version of every personality type. Like the ENFP is the crazy unicorn who dresses in all rainbow colors and goes out and chases ideas and doesn't think about what's smart or anything. And
I just have
yeah,
to point out my shirt
the
as you
problem,
make fun of our stereotype.
yeah, sometimes we embody the stereotypes. I mean, uh, it was very easy for me to figure out I was an INFJ, and it went pretty fast for me to find my way into that personality type from discovering the MBTI. Uh, but a lot of people are on the borders of that type, or are special subtypes, or have had special experiences in life that make it more difficult to type themselves.
Do you want to take a few minutes and go through your system in terms of the main four things people would look at?
Yeah, sure. So if I would just introduce my way of doing personality psychology to somebody who doesn't know me, what I would say is I type based on flow. So I look at who are you at your best as opposed to when you are stressed. So I recognize that people have different sides to themselves. So I see, okay, when tired, or when lacking in motivation, or when stressed, or when anxious, you will go into these set of traits. And when you are in a positive state, you feel good about yourself, you feel motivated, you will go into the opposite set of traits. So that's what I'm kind of seeing. The pattern I'm noticing is an INFJ at their best is an INFJ. An INFJ at their worst is an unhealthy, kind of twisted version of an ESTP. Uh, because we have inherent associations to each kind of personality or personality trait. We talk about alone time as something positive and enriching and energizing, or we talk about it as something draining and boring and stale. And our associations and our feelings about these things, they are the thing that really determines our personality type.
That
So
makes a lot of
when you're
sense.
talking about, yeah. So for me, when I talk about the personnel type, less interested in just the pure cognitive function approach, which is like, do you have this or do you do that? Do you NI or do you NE? Because I know everybody can use any cognitive function. Anybody can think or do anything they want to do at any specific time. You can train yourself to be able to handle almost any kind of situation. You can learn to be more quiet or more reserved, or you can be more outgoing in different situations. So that's also why people tend to feel so confused about their personality type, because they will find themselves maybe going into a new environment where they can be very open with themselves and where they feel they can express themselves. And they'll struggle because in the past they know that they've been quite inhibited and they've felt quite unsure about themselves and they've been afraid to express themselves. And so they look, have I changed my personality type? Have I become somebody else now that I'm more open with myself? Or am I still the same, just a bit different? Did I just discover who I am? You might get confused and you might be unsure of uh, what was the real you, if you were more real before or more real after. Or you might find yourself thinking, why am I like that in this situation or that in this situation? You know, when you're first into the MBTI, you tend to be pretty much like, oh, I am this type, and oh, this fits me perfectly, and oh, this is so great. But then a few months into that, you start noticing that, hey, I'm not like that, or sometimes I'm not like that. I'm not that stereotype. I don't relate to that version of that personality type, or this description doesn't really fit me all the time, or I'm not always like this. So you notice that it's more complex than what you thought. So everybody has what I noticed a subtype. So a unique way of developing or using their cognitive functions, or developing themselves. And so you have more outgoing INFJs, and you have more reserved or inhibited INFJs. You have more proactive and decisive INFJs, and you have more adaptive INFJs. You have INFJs that are less intuitive than average. Still, all INFJs are very intuitive, but you have INFJs that are less intuitive than other INFJs and more practical.
How do you think other mental conditions play over? This is something I've thought about before. Like if someone has ADHD or some level of, like obviously some personalities connect more with the ADHD as a concept. You know, ENFPs joke about it a lot. But in terms of real mental conditions, you know, if someone has severe social anxiety or bipolar disorder or ADHD, my thought is always that that is not changing your underlying type, but it will affect obviously your behavior and everything. Are we on the same page on that?
Yeah, I'm definitely on that page as well. I'm not thinking that, I don't think your type is associated to a special cognitive function disorder. Like you can't say that a certain type is more autistic or one type is more prone to ADHD or so, because I'm seeing more that cognitive dysfunctions like ADHD and so on, they have a relationship to cognitive function use, but not to cognitive function preference. So you have
Interesting. Yeah.
people with ADHD that struggle with focus and self-discipline, and that tends to be the primary pattern with that kind of cognitive function disorder. Most of the people who have ADHD have issues with focus and self-discipline. And I think any type can have that impairment. I think you can talk about even INFJs that have issues with ADHD, even though naturally their type is more inclined to enjoy focus.
Yeah.
And that just means they have different challenges to finding balance and finding focus and finding discipline, even though it doesn't come easy to them.
Yep. Makes total sense. Yeah, I have a good friend who's an INTJ with ADHD, and yeah, on a big picture, his life plays out very much like an INTJ. Like it makes total sense. In the moment, he has a difficult time, you know, not being on his phone every 27 seconds or things like this. Yeah.
Yeah, like we live in a distracting world nowadays as well. So I think we're all struggling with phone use. And I notice myself that when I take up the phone, I am inhibiting myself from really thinking about the situation. So I'm trying to tell myself I should put the phone down and focus, because
Yeah.
my mind needs quiet and needs silence to be at its best.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. One of the things I try to crack down on, let's say, in comments on my videos and stuff, are people really embracing those negative stereotypes. So on ENFP videos, I get all common comments about, you know, how you can't pay attention and anything more than 3 minutes is hard to follow. And I don't know about them, but I listen to 15-hour audiobooks and I often turn my phone off for a full day. And it's, you know, these are byproducts of our culture and maybe related a bit to, maybe somewhat related to type. Like we maybe our extroverted intuition likes to take in more information, so we're more likely to bounce around a little bit more, but
Yeah.
do not have to be who we are by any means. And I really dislike that. It's same with the testing. Like you read the profiles on 16 personalities or something, and it's weaknesses, and they lay it out, and like it's not necessarily flattering or helpful in many cases.
I have been connecting the cognitive functions to the archetypes that Jung worked on for a long time. And I've always kind of been titling extroverted intuition as the investigator, but I'm almost starting to move more towards the researcher, because that's what I'm starting to see that extroverted intuition is. Extroverted intuition is a passionate desire to learn and absorb information and to figure things out. So it is really constantly gathering data, often of an abstract nature or mental nature. So what I'm seeing with extrovert intuition is not this kind of fickle, jumping between parties and dancing and so on, but it's that uh, the first thing about it is a desire to learn and figure out how things work.
Yeah, I would agree with that as someone who has extroverted intuition. That's definitely it. Yeah.
That's what I'm seeing with myself. I mean, INFJs, we are specialized towards NI. So we are specialized towards conceptualizing an idea and spending all that our time and as much time as possible just in love with that process of figuring out for ourselves in our own head how we think things should work or how things could be. But what I'm seeing with ENFP is it's always that, like, let's try it out, let's test it. Has anybody else done this? What do other people think about this? Has anybody read or written something about this that I could learn? So it's always like that. Let's go get some data first.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm realizing more and more, like, we do have some original ideas, but there's definitely an aspect of taking in a lot of information quickly and being able to sort of put it together, see the patterns, and build off other people's work. And then in many cases, I think explain it or teach it well, like sort of see how it all comes together.
Yeah.
Not necessarily spending a year going really deep into one area and formulating something original from that.
No, it's too abstract for you, and you'll start thinking, what if there's no point, and what if there is nothing real to come out of this? So the inclination is, of course, to learn, and of course, if you come up with something by connecting different ideas together, the outcome is going to be original no matter what, how it was done. An original idea is an original idea no matter how it came about. So if it came up from a discussion with a bunch of different people, it's still your connections. It's what you saw in your fantasy, in your imagination. So it doesn't matter how it came about, if it came about internally or externally. It's just the inspiration.
I like what you were going back to a bit earlier, talking about flow, and I think we're very similar in that what we're interested with MBTI and psychology and personality psychology in general is application and actually helping people. And
Yeah.
I started using Instagram more, which I was opposed to for many years, and I'm happy I have been, because you get a lot of direct messages from people. So where otherwise you wouldn't get emails from, say, YouTube or things like that, people will reach out and say nice things usually. And a big one is people saying, like, I've always felt shitty about being an ENFP, which is weird to me, because it's weird in a bunch of ways. I understand it, but I guess it's a mix of reading the basic reports, which are originally designed, I think MBTI was around World War II. It was designed to just like quickly put people into jobs. I know my history right. I bought the book on the history of it. I just haven't started it yet. But so it's very much like for a manager as well to look at very quickly, like, will this person fit this job? You know, will they be good on my assembly line, or you know, will they be great in the accounting office or whatever? It's not based on, like, the way I look at building a team and working with people is where people at their best, and, you know, how can you create the environment where that person can really do what they do well? And, you know, that way, rather than, okay, here's what they'll be bad at, here's what they'll maybe be good at, and that quick thing. So you get, and then a lot of the, I think, YouTube content and stuff out there as well is kind of on the negative traits, looking at, you know, what sucks or what's so hard, the 12 struggles of being an ENFP and this kind of thing.
Yeah, I see also a lot of people are using the MBTI incorrectly. I see a lot of YouTubers who use the MBTI to kind of attack different personality types, focusing on their negatives, focusing on their weaknesses, and thinking too categorically about the MBTI, because there is nothing about you that you cannot develop or outgrow or mature away from. So if you have any struggle that you have in your life, through persistent effort and hard work, you can develop those things and improve yourself. And talking about the personality type in the sense of, oh, this type is good at that and this type is bad at that, is going to be inefficient and inaccurate, because any type can learn to be good at anything. For my jobs that I've had in customer service, I've had to learn to be more polite. And that's something I've always struggled with. I've always thought politeness, like, how are you? And how are we having, nice to meet you. And have a
Is
nice
that
day. I
that
always found that
INFJ,
very
or is that
difficult.
being Scandinavian as well? You're just like, this is inefficient.
It's definitely Scandinavian, and for me that was very difficult. Also being so social all the time, and having a friendly tone when you talk to people on the phone, or all those things are taxing to me, and of course they are draining, and I don't want to do them as much as possible. But I've learned to do it, and I know that I can do it, and I found a way to kind of reprogram my mind to sustain it and to do it in a positive way for myself.
Yeah, that's a very good point. A lot of how we approach things, like for ENFPs, we like, I think, some level of challenge and being under pressure to get things done.
Yeah.
Just tends to appeal. So you can take a project that might not need to be challenging, but you can design it for yourself to make it challenging. And a lot of us do that without realizing it, just by doing things last minute and then feeling bad that we do things last minute. And I try to encourage people, like, if that's when you do your best work, rather than what a lot of people do, say with that example, is procrastinate most of the week, feeling guilty that they're procrastinating this project, and then they do it
Yeah.
all on Saturday, Sunday for Monday. I say, like, go out, have fun all week, and then just start at Saturday, knowing that that's your pattern, that that's what works for you. And then you
Yeah.
have the same
Or
pressure without the guilt.
very much so. You can set the deadline for tomorrow, and I see a lot of successful ENFPs do that. So they tell themselves it has to be done now, instead of saying, they never put things off. They make a rule for themselves to never put things off. I won't make a decision about this next week. I'll make a decision about this now. And
Yeah.
if I make a decision about it now, I'm going to have to do it now. And that's how they kind of fix the issue of the procrastination to begin with.
Yeah, that's a very good way to do it. And I don't think we get much better at decisions if we give it more time. I'm sure other people do, but I never make better decisions if I sit on it for 3 weeks. I just, like, whatever I decide in the moment. It could be worse or it could be better, but as far as I've seen with myself, there's no clear evidence that sitting on things leads to better decisions. So might as well make it now and move on.
Yeah. Personally, my struggle is I kind of come from a struggle with, well, I've always been lazy my entire life in school and growing up. I've always been a person that didn't put enough effort into anything because I never had to, because, yeah, I was able to figure things out and get around it and deal with it anyways.
You're smart and
So
resourceful,
I had
so
a
you didn't
tendency.
have to develop a work ethic.
Exactly. So I found myself doing things too slowly and taking a long time with a lot of things. And yeah, and stall decisions and put things forward as well. So that's something I've always thought, oh, I can just keep thinking about it. And I just keep thinking about it longer and longer and longer.
That's
So
interesting. Yeah, I think,
um,
I mean, I have an ability to get things done really quick. And that comes directly from doing things last minute and then developing that. All right, I have 4 hours to get whatever done, because I don't do it as much now, but growing up, both perhaps as an ENFP or perhaps related to being an ENFP, I should say, and I also have ADHD, is I would just do things last minute, and then you do get better and better at that. But then as you get your life together, you're like, I have a lot of free time now, because I've got, like, I'm used to working really hard for like 2 hours, not working gradually for 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever it is. So if we could combine our skill sets, our two, um, our two issues. Yeah.
yes, then we would conquer the world probably.
Yeah.